Welcome to Planning Phase Syndicate. This is the new year, baby. We are in 2025. We have episode 38 coming at you, and we are excited that my pirate flag fell down in the background while I was upstairs getting a drink. So I guess no pirate flag tonight. But thank you all so much for joining us in the new year. We apologize. We were off for a couple weeks. It took a couple weeks off. I was supposed to be prepping for a PQ. I did not prep very well for a PQ. But we'll get into that in a little bit later tonight. So we have a bunch of stuff coming at you this week and next week. We got some cool different segments that we're going to be doing a little bit tonight. We're going to be doing quite a bit of analysis over the PQ, and then a kind of a discussion about, going into the rest of the PQ season for the next couple of weeks. Obviously the meta shifts a lot, and I think that's like one of the big things like KTOD has talked about before on their podcast is they say, hey, the meta shifting, blah blah blah, what's going to happen. And so like instead of trying to mimic what they do, I just want to throw some questions out there, talk a little bit about some of the top tier decks that have taken the PQs down. And then next week, what we'll do is we'll take some of those decks and we'll probably analyze what they're good into, what they're not good into, and those type of things to kind of see if there is something that is worthwhile swerving to or not. But without further ado, joining me on mic tonight is my co-host JJ. Get the hat off your head because they lost, or they actually won, and they didn't want them to win. How are you tonight?
Yeah, pretty upset that my Giants decided last week to, all of a sudden have a fantastic offense and put up like 40 points on the board, something that they haven't done in like 5 years, only to their detriment, and give up a prime draft spot. But, that's the game, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it was funny. I don't know if the Broncos won earlier tonight, but I was watching the Broncos and Chiefs a little bit because the Chiefs are like 15-1, right? Like, which is just crazy. And this is sad. I don't want to see this. It feels like the Chiefs are going to just become the next like New England Patriots, and then a couple years we're going to hear about how they cheated the system somehow, right? And that's what'll happen. But anyway, like I was watching them, and they were like it was like the end of the first half, and it was like 21-0 Denver, and I was like, how is this even possible? Are they like throwing the game so Denver actually gets a spot in the playoffs? Is that what they're doing?
Yeah, for real.
I don't.
But in the meantime, right, we're just hoping that the Lions hold off. They're playing as we're recording right now against Minnesota, and they're doing pretty well so far. So,
yep. So if I accidentally look to the side a few more often than I usually do, that is why I have the Lions game up on my little screen over here. Because not that I care too much, but I do really need the Lions to win so that they can get a bye week. That's really what we need. But enough of sports. I don't, let's talk about the sport that we all love to death, which is Star Wars Unlimited. This weekend I played in a PQ. I went out there with some of my locals. It was super fun. And it's kind of funny because one of my locals that hung out with me, like a couple of them went to bed early, which I probably should have gone to bed early. But you know me. I mean, ask JJ. Last time we went for X-Wing, I don't. Midnight hits, and JJ's like, "Hey, are you gonna go to bed? Like, we gotta get up at 8 hours."
And then 3 hours later, after watching Return of the Jedi, we're going to bed. It was great.
Then we finally went to bed, and then we got up 5 hours later and played. 6 hours. We had 6 hours sleep there.
Yeah.
So I did the similar thing this time. I got more than 6 hours, but not much more than 6 hours this time. And but it's funny. Some of the locals that came out with me, one of the guys was like, "Man, this is like super fun." And I was like, "Yeah, this is like what X-Wing was like back when I used to travel for X-Wing. Like this is like these times where we all just get to hang out. There's no wife there. It's just you and your buddies just sitting around shooting the shit, eating food you're not supposed to eat at home, and drinking more than what you normally would drink at home. I think I drank, I don't know, almost a half a fifth of whiskey that night. So
oh damn,
yeah, so we'll just we'll put it that way. I definitely got my I definitely got my drinking in. But it was a fun weekend. I took my son with me, and he got to play, and he did not do very well. He ended up dropping and playing in a draft after that. So
nice.
We're gonna have to change up his deck a little bit and get him a little bit more practice there. For playing. But I went 4-3. I dropped my first 2 games, and the first game I dropped was because it was a mirror match, and I swerved. I thought it would be super fun to play Bosk Blue. instead of Django Tarkenton, because I was a little worried there would be a bunch of that all we would have is a bunch of mirror matches, and the last thing I want to do is play Django Tarkentown mirror match all day. So I said, "Oh, nobody will be running Boss Blue, right?" Well, my first round opponent was also running Boss Blue, so that was super fun. He basically that game came down, and I'll have to do some more research, but basically the first game came down to he milled my restock. I didn't get his, and he ended up having like a secret tech card, like a Bazine or something like that, that took my vigilance. And yeah, so I lost that. And then the last game, the second game for that, I was winning. And then he held on to a vigilance and I forgot about it. And he milled my last 6 cards and he had like 4 more damage on my base than I had on his. So we were both
Oh
out of
man.
cards. He got my restock the second time. I got his restock early, but then it was just like, okay, well, now we're here and we're just stuck. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that was a little bit disheartening for my first round. My second round was really close. I went 1-2 in the games, and that was against the Django Tarkentown. I lost the last game literally by one action. They were able to play a daring raid after I'd already claimed, and I claimed that I had a clear path to victory. I had 4 units on the board to their 0 units, and they had a daring raid in. So,
damn.
Yeah. So yeah, that was a little sad and disheartening for that one. So I did the 0-2 thing, and then I almost dropped because I was like, all right, this is not going to be a good day. And I was like, well, what else am I going to do? I'm in Chicago, and so I ended up winning my next game, and then my third game, the same thing happened. I play, no, my third game I won, my fourth game I won, my fifth game I had to play a Sabine ECL, and that guy ended up making it into the top as well. And he was my 5th round opponent. He ended up going 5-2, so I don't feel too bad about losing to him. And that game just came down to attrition. Like he was able to get more units out than I could. And K2SO discard is, crazy. So that happened, and then I won my last 2 games. And ended up, like I said, I ended up going 4-3 on the day. I came in 43rd, I think. And I don't know, I got like 6 packs that had literally nothing but like a hyperspace. I got a hyperspace Aura Sing that will never get played, and a couple other hyperspace cards, but no legendaries, nothing. We got nothing good out of the day.
Oh man, that's rough. Yeah. But still, I mean, I know you ended up swerving to Boss Blue at the last second. What were you originally planning to bring?
Django Tarkentown, but I didn't want to bring the space version. I have like a non-space version that I've been playing, and the problem is what I was worried about. And this we'll get into this in a little bit too, like when we get into some of the PQ stuff. But the issue I was worried about is one of my testing partners plays Sabine Green, and they were teching pretty hard against Django. And we did some practice games, and I won like the first round of the game games against him. But after he gets sideboard, I just couldn't get it. And that's probably because I didn't have the triple dark raid, so I wasn't faster than them. And I did that on purpose because I didn't want to play like the same old meta that everybody else was playing. And then when we got there wasn't as many Djangos as like we thought there was going to be. So
that's fair.
Yeah. So that was not what I was excited about. But yeah, I don't know. I made a last minute decision to play boss. I had been playing it a little bit during the week, just wasn't. And it's my own fault. I built it. It's like when you bring 2 X-Wing lists and you like print both your papers out for them, and you have all of it. I stupidly did that. So I brought 2 decks with me. Well, that's kind of on me.
Yeah.
But anyway, before we get into the PQ stuff, I wanted to kind of go through. We missed out on some spoilers, and I want to talk a little bit about the spoilers tonight. If you're okay with that, JJ.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's get into our Galactic Gazette. All right. So while we were gone, they released an article, teasers from hyperspace. And essentially on here, they have some stuff that they believe are coming out that's going to be kind of crazy. I don't know. Gigi, did you get a chance to browse the article?
Yeah, actually, I did get to go through it. The first thing that caught me by far was the artwork that they had on there for a lot of the capital ships, and then some of the other stuff that they've been spoiling over the week. I mean, they've really, really stepped up the quality of their artwork that they're putting into the game, and that's something that I really, really appreciate. Playing other FFG games from the past, they just done such a great job at getting that those artist renditions for the scenarios that they're trying to bring out, and it's just stunning. It's really great.
Yeah. And so the big thing is we talked a little bit about this. The new mechanics that got introduced is piloting, obviously, and indirect damage. And indirect damage was something that we had in Destiny. Um, they did kind of confirm about the fact that it cannot be applied to shields. It goes underneath shields. That is different than Destiny.
Mhm.
But that's a thing. So I think that's kind of cool. They're gonna have a bunch of common events from the first two sets that have been mirrored in this set, but this time they're gonna say vehicle only or space unit only restriction. Um,
Nice.
so that's crazy. That means we're getting some common events, and they're only gonna apply, and we don't know what they are, but they're only gonna apply to the new version. Um, which is crazy. So they also said that there's going to be a ground unit that can attack space. So I have to
Oh,
ask you, what ground unit can attack space, JJ? I don't remember one like outside of
yeah.
maybe like a launchers, like missile launchers or something.
I mean, the only thing that really comes to mind, but we've already seen this out in the last wave of cards that came out, were the clone trooper tanks that shoot the steady ion beam that brings down the Lucre Hulk launchers from the Battle Geonosis. That's the only thing that's technically attacking space, but beyond that, nothing that I could really think of that comes out to mind that would be like a surface to space like launcher. um yeah, I'm really interested to see what they're going to use for that.
Yeah, I didn't know. I couldn't remember like if there was like some weird like battle things or something like that, like that we just missed. I don't remember it though, and I don't know. So I thought that was kind of crazy. They also said that there's going to be a powerful event card that cares about the power of each individual friendly space unit. So I'm guessing it's going to be a high cost event
Yeah.
card like Christophus. That's whatever. They are going to have unique space unit appear in this set twice with different names. So maybe we're getting two Fet's fire sprays. So now we're going to have
Nice.
three altogether. You think that's I
Yeah.
think that's a possibility. Or another
Yeah.
Millennium Falcon, like two of them. I don't know. Um,
What I am really hopeful for, with the same vein as they're introducing all these pilots and stuff, is that I want the commander or officer units that we have currently to be on board capital ships in order to enhance their abilities, right? So a lot more of those cheaper capital ships that we have, like Bright Hope and stuff like that, get more use out of the commander type cards or officials that can be boarded onto those as a pilot, and that way they can do more enhanced stuff. That would be interesting to see down the line.
yeah, so that's kind of what I thought too. They also have a card called Jump to Light Speed that's going to mirror the set. So in Destiny, I believe we had like a card that lets you like leave battle and win, and it was like it was broken. It was a stupid card. They should never have printed it. So I
Yeah.
hope to God we don't get that. Like I hope to God that that's not something in the set, but we'll see, I guess. Um, they said the set contains two units that are tied for being the largest units ever printed. They are larger than any unit from set 1 or 3. So the largest unit we had in set 1 was that finalizer, or from any of the sets was that finalizer at 11 cost. So it's going to be bigger than that.
Mhm.
So, do you think we're getting a Death Star? Do you think we actually get a Death Star?
Oh, I don't know, dude. I mean, I think if they ever decide to do like a collaborative campaign where multiple people fight against like an AI deck that is the Death Star, I think that would be fun. But as a regular card that a person could put into their deck, I don't know.
Okay. I don't know. It feels weird. They also said that there's going to be twice as many modification upgrades than any other set. So that's kind of crazy, right? Like
Yeah.
they are going to have like a lot more modifications. which means that means we're gonna have upgrades. So either they're gonna need to print more upgrade hate, or we're just gonna have to get used to upgrades, and we're gonna all have to embrace them. Like that's
Yeah.
just gonna become a thing. So we'll see. We'll see what it does. They also wrote subtitles for it. I'm not gonna go through all the subtitles. You can read them here if you haven't read them already. The only one that I was like super interested in was the prototype battleship. Do you remember them having a prototype battleship in the shows? I don't remember that.
Maybe some of the separatist stuff, like leading up to the Invisible Hand. That's the only thing that I could really think of that would be a prototype battleship. I mean, even the acclimators or the venators, they're technically like a lower class, like cruisers or destroyers, but nothing I can think of as a prototype battleship.
Okay, because I couldn't either. And then the other one that stuck out to me was Wisecracking Wheelman. Is that referring to Hondo? Like, are we going to get a Hondo?
Yeah.
Is that
I think
okay.
Hondo. Yeah, I think that's Hondo for sure. Yeah.
I just wanted to know, like, I don't remember him being called Wheelman, but I do remember them calling him a Wisecrack. So I was kind of wondering if that's if we were going to get that or not, like something with Hondo. So, let's see here. What else do they have on there that was like kind of interesting? The wordiest leader in the set has 62 more words. So I don't know what that means. That's weird.
Wow. Yeah, that is.
There is going to be an aggression card that's now going to let you ramp. So guess what? You can now run red, green, and you can just like insane. I want an insane ramp mall deck. That's what I want. Like, let me get to 8 resources like by turn 4. That's what I want.
That would be insane, man. That's crazy.
So yeah, the not counting the base health, the highest number that appears on a card is the number 15. So that's interesting. There are multiple bases in this set with more than 30 health.
Whoa. That means it's probably going to give you like a detriment, right? Like maybe a benefit to your opponent.
Yeah. We're doing an episode, Matt. Yes. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. Like, I think that's a super interesting. Like, it's a little scary, right? Like, I mean, I hope it changes it up enough. Like, we can use it as like a control mechanism, right? Like, it can go into control decks. Like, give me a blue base that I can play my boss with. That just gives a middle finger to Sabine. That says, if you have more, like, you get 2 free units, and then just let me super laser blast them off the board.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So that was kind of the interesting things that they have. They said finally they are eager to know what the cards do, right? And so they said, what cards do you think they're on and what abilities this unit can attack? Like, what? So, like, I don't know. Like, we have some of those already. They're reinvigorating the Spectre thing, which leads me to think we're getting Hera. We're getting Hera as a leader. Like, again, like we have to. Like, I don't know. Like, to me, that's great. Like, I want Hera again.
Yeah. A new ability, definitely, something that just refreshes her. That'd be great. Yeah.
But do you think we'll get Ezra? Do you think we're gonna get Ezra as or can we get a Chopper or a Zeb as a pilot, right?
Yeah.
Like, as a leader? Like, can we have like a Spectre force? Because, like, okay, and if we get enough Spectres, we are 100% running to Twin Suns with only Spectres. That's what we're gonna do, JJ. Like, we'll figure out how to stream this stupid thing. I'll figure it out. Awesome, or maybe at Adepticon we'll all get together and we'll record it. But if they have like like I'm already excited like to get more Spectre stuff. But if we get Ezra as a pilot, and can you imagine, like, give me a gauntlet? Let me have Ezra fly a gauntlet or a ghost. Oh,
that would be amazing,
so much
man.
fun.
Oh yeah. The Ezra gauntlet or the Chopper gauntlet would be amazing. That'd be great.
Yeah. So those were kind of the releases that they had. This is a little bit of the artwork. Nothing like super awesome. My guess is next month we're going to start getting spoilers for it. Which will be exciting because we're going to have like PQ season and spoiler season roughly all at the same time. I don't know. I'm excited to see what we get with Spectres again. and I'm excited for the higher health bases. Like that, I am like if it's 31, I don't care. Like that's stupid. But if I get like a 35 or a 40 health base, I don't know. That seems pretty good to me. Yeah, so I think some of the other things that personally that I'm a little excited for is the fact that with us being able to get spoilers, I think one of the most exciting things is the fact that we're getting these space vehicles and the fact that we are getting the ability to have, vehicles like kind of interact with each other. I am excited also that they are going to give us a way to attack from ground, because that way you don't have to like force yourself to put space units in. Like right now, having a space only deck does kind of hurt, except for if all you're doing is going, aggro. And like this gives you a way to play more of a mid-range deck or some sort of a tempo-ish deck instead of having to have like the Django Tarkintown space deck that's like all aggro, right? And I think that's the big thing is when you're able to do those things, then it gives you the ability to play other decks without having it. And I do know that we have that ship, that yellow ship that you can play that does attack ground units. So you don't have to 100% like run that aggro, but um, I don't know. I do think that it'll be very, very interesting to see what we get with it being able to do like attacking the space units. And I really like if somebody's in the chat while we're recording this live and wants to tell me what they think it is, or after in post production, if you want to tell me whatever the heck you think it is, let me know, because like I would be super interested to know exactly what that would be. The other thing, if you are interested, let us know as well what you think some of the other units will be or anything like that. Like I would love to know what you think is going to be coming out. That will be quite an amazing thing. We have quite a lot of ships coming out that could possibly be super amazing. With that being said, we're going to get into our Chaos of War segment. All right, welcome to our Chaos of War segment. This is essentially our segment on we're going to cover a bunch of the different PQ stuff in a few minutes, but what I want to do is focus on one PQ, and that's specifically because I played in it, right? So like I'm a little biased because I played in this PQ. This weekend there was, I don't know, like at least 11 of them that we have results for, and I think there was like a total of 15 or 16 PQs that fired this weekend. We are not going to have time to go through every single PQ all the time. So we'll probably do a little bit of what we used to do with X-Wing, and we'll probably take the top couple of decks. We'll take a screenshot of some of the different things, and we'll talk through a little bit about some of the lists and things like that come out of there that are interesting. The reason I wanted to talk about this PQ a little bit is because this one is closer to my home meta, because I would say at least 20%, maybe 15% of the people at this PQ were people that have either played with me in Michigan at some point, or were people that are native to the Chicago area that had played in the other PQ. So this is what I would consider my, like, I don't know, what do we call we call the Mitten Midwest? Is that what we get to call it? I don't know.
Yeah, Midwest. It sounds about right.
Mitten Midwest. So like we have a little bit more aggro-y type meta over here. So I wanted to cover this PQ, and then kind of going forward, what we'll do is we'll probably do a highlights for the PQ and maybe like an actual meta analysis. So to begin with, these are the winners. We had two Quinlins, Quinlan Green and Quinlan Red, essentially face off the top cut for winning this PQ. There was a Han Green, two Sabini CLs, a Bosk Blue, a CAD Tarkintown, and an Iden Yellow, which I don't know where Iden Yellow came out of. I don't know how we don't know about this deck, but we are definitely covering that deck tonight, and we're going to talk about it as well.
Yeah.
So, JJ, why don't you go through? I mean, and again, we haven't covered a lot on Quinlan, so why don't you go ahead and go through the Quinlan deck, read off what it is, and then we kind of talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, so we this first one here for the winner of the BQ, we got a green or ECL Quinlan Voss deck. We got 3 copies of L337, 3 Gamorrean Retainers, 3 Battlefield Marines, 2 R2D2s, 1 Frontline Shuttle, 3 copies of the Millennium Falcon. We got 3 copies of Hu Yang. We got 3 Sundari Peacekeepers. We got 3 Cobb Vamps, 2 Techs, 2 Kiras, 3 Ayla Sakuras, 2 copies of Plo Koon, 1 Millennium Falcon, the newer one. You got 2 copies of Shoot First, 2 Surprise Strikes, 2 Clear the Fields, 2 Spare the Targets, 3 copies of Bounty Hunter's Quarry, 2 Hotshot Thief L44 Blasters, and then 3 General's Blades for that. And then in the on their side there, we got 3 copies of Spark of the Rebellion, 2 Sanctioner Shuttles, 1 copy of Tech, 1 Kira, 2 Han Solos, and 1 U-Wing Reinforcement to round off that particular list. Really interesting list, actually. You got a lot of great low-cost cards that can go in there for them. A really strong start there for your side, for your ground units. You have a really solid amount of space units between the Millennium Falcons and the frontline shuttles there that help you bring in, kind of help block off that area to make sure that your opponent doesn't take too much advantage of the space side. And then you just pound them in with numbers there. You can get a lot of offense out really quickly between the Bounty Hunter's Quarry that lets you bring in more cards into your deck, what you need. And then between the Surprise Strikes and the Shoot First, you can always gain that upper hand against your opponent there, especially if they're equipped with the D44 Blaster or the General's Blade. Just really ups that offense on there. So really great list. Definitely something that we haven't seen that's not very common with Quinlan Voss, but yeah, great job.
Yeah, and like you said, this deck is very low to the curve, and it does have a lot of units that are very similar in cost. Kira is the only 4 cost unit that they have there. And your top end is Ayla, Plo, and 1 Millennium Falcon. That's your top end. So
Yeah.
the idea though is because Quinlan's able to ping damage, right? So like you have Quinlan has the ability to be able to just say, hey, okay, if you have a unit that's 1 damage or a couple of damage or something like that, you just ping it and you can like deal with it. And being able to, like, one of the big plays is being able to use ECL to ECL out Ayla. You could ping a unit, so you could kill essentially a 7 health unit. You could kill a leader unit with Ayla. That's what you can do. Like, Ayla is I'm going to kill a leader unit like on 5 resources. So if they have a Django out, you can kill a Django, and it's not even a question about it. And the General's Blade is there, obviously, for the fact that it allows you to have discounts, so you can play multiple cards in a turn. So if you're playing against something that like bounces your units back, you have the ability to play that General Blade, swing, blah blah blah. You get, you could play another unit for 2 less. It's just crazy, right? And because you have a couple of different Jedis, you have the ability to put that on not just like 1 or 2 units. You have Plo Koon, you have Ayla, you have Quinlan, you have what's the stupid robot Huang? You have Huang there, right?
Mm-hmm.
I will say that frontline shuttle is crazy. I don't understand that tech at all. I don't know. I don't understand it. And I will say this deck is also very space light. So my assumption is what they're doing with it. And I didn't get to play against this guy, but what they're doing with a lot of this is they're going very hardcore into the ground, and they're using their bounces and their pings to be able to stop the the stuff in space. You do have 3 Millennium Falcons, but that's like that, and that frontline shuttle. That's your space units. I don't know. I like this. I also really like that they have 3 bounties in there. Like, that just allows you to play the extra units, right? And it allows you to dig through your deck. So
Yeah, I mean the best thing about that combo too is that, like, if your opponent's already taken initiative and you have enough resources, you can essentially play a Bounty Hunter's Quarry on a unit that your opponent controls, and then you spare the target to return it back into the hand. You get to draw a card from using Bounty Hunter's Quarry, and you're set yourself up for a later turn, and you've already removed that unit off the board. So it's a nice bit of of a combo there between the two cards there, just helping you remove and still getting a card draw out of it as well. Especially if your opponent has a really strong unit that they deployed that particular turn, and you know that they're going to swing into your base. Just helps you remove that and set yourself up for a later turn. Really great.
Yeah. So let's go on to the second place deck. Was a Quinlan Tarkentown Red deck. So this, and okay, so like this one's a little bit more of a known quantity. And we'll talk a little bit about it because it's got the more recent spice of the Grogu's, which that's definitely something that is a little bit newer in the Quinlan decks. I will say in the Quinlans I had been running, I had been playing Grogu. But I also actually had like I was also running like the General's Blade as an offsuit color, and it never really worked on Grogu. I was trying to use it for like some of the Force stuff, and outside of like Force Throw, it just never worked. But Force Throw works insanely well. You play Grogu round 1. If they don't kill it, you got Force Throw like starting the first thing. So this one is Quinlan Tarkentown, 3 Grogus, 3 L337s, 3 Sabines, 3 A-Wings, 3 Cassians, 3 Ezra Bridgers, 3 Falcons, 2 Red 3s, 3 Kiras, 2 K2SOs, 3 Plo Koons, 2 of the Falcons, 3 Hans, 3 Force Throws, 2 Daring Raid, 3 main decked Spark of the Rebellions, 3 Surprise Strikes, 1 Waylay, and 2 of the Hotshot Blasters. The sideboard is the 3rd Daring Raid, 1 Bamboozled, 2 of the Fang Fighters, 2 Techs, 1 Waylay, 2 Pillage, and 1 K2SO. So this deck is doing things a little bit differently. Like you are still using the pings. They're running a very light hand destruction deck with the Force Throws and the Sparks. But essentially that's kind of they're trying to get more towards that mid game with this type of a deck. And what they're doing is that Grogu that Grogu is actually really, really good because it adds that Force unit in there for you. And it allows you to activate that Force Throw, like I had said earlier, a little bit faster than you normally would. But the biggest thing here is because of the way their curve works, they have a few higher end units. They don't have to ping you every single turn. They can stall you out a little bit. I don't know. Have you had a chance at all to play Quinlan, JJ?
No, I have not actually, but it's definitely one of the units I've been, or one of the leaders I've been trying to deck build around. And this particular build is actually what I've been looking to mess around with first. Although now looking at the first place, I mean that is some serious tech that never really thought of. But I do prefer the more aggressive approach with Quinlan, just because you're pinging damage already early, and if you can get out units out there quicker, you can deal with these units as you need to, or force their units to attack yours while you're attacking their bases, and they're likely to die. So yeah.
And the big thing is they have, essentially there is 12 cards that they can play round 1 and be able to ping your unit and then target down it, so they can get like an aggressive advantage. And like when I played against this with Bosk, I didn't actually like my turn 1 is I played against this deck, and I played my Dr. Pershing round 1, and like they pinged it and then they Tarkentowned it, and it still had 1 health left, and I was like, all right, well, I'm still getting at least 1 card out of this, like that's fine with me. And you wasted a Tarkentown on it. But that's kind of the idea. Like, the big idea is that you could take any other deck that's not a Bosk, you could take and you can actually try to get rid of their turn 1 play. And that actually works in my opinion, it works very, very, very well to be able to do things that you normally wouldn't be able to do, except for, in there or with some sort of like a Django style deck.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on to the top 4, we have a Sabine ECL. This was ran by my local John, a very, very good player. He has taken down enough events that I've ran Choke a Horse. So I don't know, JJ, I guess go ahead and go through it real quick, because he does have a couple of different things in here we had not been seeing before.
Yeah.
So let's go through his.
Yeah, so we got this Sabine ECL deck here. We got 3 copies of R2D2, 2 copies of Soldier the 501st, which is from the new wave that came out recently. Got 3 Sabine Wrens, 3 Battlefield Marines, 3 Green Squadron A-Wings, 3 Fleet Lieutenants. We got 3 copies of Cassian, 2 Fighters for Freedoms, 2 Red Threes, 2 Sindaric Peacekeepers, 1 Admiral Yularen, 3 copies of K2SO, 2 Bright Hopes, 3 copies of Poe Dameron. We got 3 copies of Wrecker, 3 Rebel Assaults, 1 Timely Intervention, 3 copies of For a Cause I Believe in, 2 General's Blades, and 3 Dark Sabers. And then on the sideboard, we got 3 Daring Raids, 2 Confiscates, 1 Spec Force Soldier, 2 Wolves, 1 additional Fighter for Freedom, and 1 Disabling Fen Fighter for the side there. Definitely really interesting to see the addition of the General's Blades in there, and then I love the addition of the Soldier, the 501st rather. It is a cheap unit, only 1 resource, has raid 1, so you're essentially attacking with a 2-3 unit that could do damage early on if your opponent's not able to deal with them. And they're just very, very cheap units to get out there really quick and to start attacking your opponent's space very quickly. Really plays into the way Sabine wants to play, be aggressive early on and have those cheap units out there. And even if you get them later on in the game, as you're getting 4 and 5 resources, those are just a great way to just deploy out there and just get that pressure onto your opponent really fast. So I like this a lot, actually. The addition to this deck is really good.
Yeah, and a lot of the reason, part of the reason they have that in there is to help with those Tarkin Town decks, right? Like Tarkin Town is obviously one of the big things, and being able to Tarkin Town like their only unit for Sabine is bad. And we'll see. There's the other list that was ran by Ryan, another one for my locals. We'll talk a little bit about his tech too in a second here. But that's again, that's the big thing, right? Is the fact that you have the ability to play 1 cost units, churn 1, so you don't have to worry about some of the boss of the world, right? For it. So
Yeah.
all right, moving on to the Han 1 green deck. This is a fun deck. This is a little bit of somewhat like a style of the Casino Han, because you have the Luke Skywalkers in there. And the sideboard, we'll talk about the sideboard in a minute. They're crazy. They have a card in there that no one's ever played. But this one's got 3 R2D2, 2 commissions, 2 hotshot blasters, 3 Leias, 2 Spark of Hopes, so that they have a little bit of ramp in there. 3 R2D2s, 3 Echo Base Defenders, 3 Falcons, 3 DJs, 3 Techs, 3 Resupplies, 3 Bright Hopes, 3 Marauders, 3 Falcons, 3 Lukes, 3 U-Ring Reinforcements, 3 Hans, and 3 Home Ones. So very base deck. The commissions is definitely newer, right? That's a little bit newer of a tech. We've seen that used before, mainly in we were seeing this with Bobas, and now they're just kind of taking that and using it with Han. I'm a little surprised we don't have like the L337s in here, but I guess Leia does let you exhaust, and R2D2 does say, screw you, I'm going to, pick whatever card I want. The sideboard is 3 Sparks, 3 Clear the Areas, 3 of the, is that Lex? That's Lex, right?
Yeah, Lex Bonteri.
Yep. What does Lex do, JJ?
I don't know. Actually, I'm looking up the card because I have not seen that card played actually at all.
Yeah, so that card is crazy. That's like one of the things. That's the card I was talking about. I've never seen it. It's something about if you don't have resources in play, you get to do something. And then they have 1 Change of Heart. So this is not quite Casino Han that the Bobby Sapphires of the world was running, but it does have those 3 Lukes that are offsuit. And you can resource them and use tech to bring it out. It still has a tech DJ combo that we have in the Han Yellow. Obviously, this is not going for hand stripping as much as like the Han Yellow deck does. But this deck does provide you with the ability to kind of stave them off and then hit it main hand. if this deck becomes super popular, I will be excited to start playing Palpatine again.
So I gotta say, now that I've read his ability and I'll read it out here, it says when an opponent plays a card, if that opponent paid less than the card's cost to play it, ready or exhaust a unit. To me, this feels like very scum to me. But that's actually a really interesting way to. I guess it really does depend on what type of decks you're playing against, especially if you got people who are playing like Triple Dark Raid, or like U-Wing Reinforcements or something like that. It's definitely really interesting to have that in your sideboard, so you can put it in, especially just to kind of tech against those particular cards, because you can really set yourself up by playing a more expensive card. And if he's on the board there, you can ready that card that you just played that turn. It does require quite a bit of setup, but you can also exhaust one of your opponent's units that they had ready, in order for you to prevent them from being able to attack that turn. So there is a bit of flexibility with that card that uh, should see a little more in play, I would think.
Fair enough. So yeah, so that's kind of what this deck is. I like this deck a lot. This is actually, I think, a little bit easier to play than the Han Yellow deck is, but it is nice to see Han Green actually doing something um and getting into the top again as well. Now we're in the top 8. This was a Bosk blue deck, definitely a little bit different than the one I ran. But JJ, what is this Bosk blue deck?
Yeah, I gotta say, reading this deck, I'm like, there's a total of 5 units that get played. So we got 2 copies of Dr. Pershing, we got 3 copies of the Client, 1 Supreme Leader Snoke, 2 Crate Dragons, and 2 Avengers, and that is the entirety of all the units that physically get played. The rest of these events, we got a Fine Edition. We got 2 copies of Daring Raid, 1 Restock, 3 Power of the Dark Sides, 3 Merciless Contest, 2 Open Fires, 3 Vigilances, 3 copies of Takedown, 2 Fell the Dragons. We got 3 copies of Vanquish, 3 Super Laser Blasts, which makes sense, 3 copies of Top Target, 3 Death Marks, 3 Entrenched, 1 copy of Imprisoned, and 3 Perilous Positions. And then on the sideboard, we have 1 additional Fine Edition, 1 additional Restock, 2 Force Chokes, 1 more Imprisoned, and then 2 copies of the Clan Saxon Gauntlet, 1 additional Supreme Leader Snoke, 1 additional Great Dragon, and 1 additional Avenger on the sideboard there. Really, really interesting, because you're relying mainly on just continuously taking out your opponent's unit until you get those big units out on the board. The main issue I see with this is that if your opponent is hanging on to their takedowns or their fellow dragons, waiting for you to play your big units like your Snoke or Crate Dragons, then they've essentially taken out your entire offense. But it's definitely really, really interesting to see this type of deck here. This plays very, very heavy control. But if you're not prepared for it, it can be absolutely frustrating if your opponent just overplays their hand really early and you're just continuously taking out their units. So congrats on making it to the top 8. This is definitely a really interesting twist on Boss Blue.
Yeah, and so the it's definitely different. It doesn't have a bounty hunter in here. Like, you would think that bounty hunter crew is like one, like that's what I had only 1 copy in my deck, and like, in fairness, I didn't play it very often, but it like that's what I used to run in my Thrawn blue to be able to recycle my vigilances so I could just like mill.
Yeah.
The Imprisoned is definitely unique. That a Fine Edition makes sense, right? Because a lot of times you have a lot of cards, you can play like something crazy out of your opponent's discard pile. Like, that makes sense too, just because of that. So it is different. It's very, yeah, like you said, it's very low united. I'm more surprised with only 1 Snoke. I would almost have to go with 2 Snokes. I just don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the difference, like, I ran Help's main deck in mine versus Crate Dragons, whereas this one was Crate Dragons. And Crate Dragons is probably the better call because I sideboarded in my Crate Dragons into any matchup, almost every like mid range matchup that I played. So, um, right, the next one is a Cad Bane Tarkin Town. We've seen this a little bit before. This one is not specifically space oriented, a little bit more bounty hunter focused. This has 2 Greedos, 3 Sabines, 3 Crafties, 3 Cartel Spacers, 1 mercenary gunship, 2 Lurkings, 1 Boba Fett, 1 Punishing One. This is a JJ deck here. 3
Yeah.
Forlom, 3 Jabbas, 3 Boss, 3 Zuckuses, 3 Ruthless Raiders, 3 Cads, 3 McClunkies, 1 Shoot First, 2 No Goods, 2 Sneak Attack, 2. Now there were 2 of them. 2 Waylays, 2 Cunnings, which is definitely something we had not seen in this style of a deck, and 2 Hotshot Blasters. Your sideboard has 2 Daring Raids, 2 Force Chokes, and No Goods to be Dead. On the last Lurking Tie, a last Waylay, 2 Pillages, and 1 Change of Heart. This deck strives obviously for those. Now there are 2 of them, being able to get out your bigger units a lot earlier. They have a lot of bounty hunters and underworld in here. So this does is very beneficial. It's weird only seeing 1 Boba Fett, but I guess that kind of makes sense, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's what this deck is trying to do. And the pillages are in there in case they have to play against a boss.
Yeah, definitely useful.
So the 2 Cunnings is kind of spicy too. I did not think that those would be in there, but those 2 Cunnings being in there is kind of spicy.
Yeah, I mean they're just so useful. Even if you're paying 6 for that, they just come in so handy in this type of deck where you absolutely need to either exhaust units, mid game, which can be really key to burn from your opponent to react to what you're playing on there. It also helps if you have job on the board, just helping you reduce that cost a little bit as well. But yeah, fantastic.
The next one is very similar Sabine deck to the other one that we've seen. The main difference is it doesn't have the General's Blades. It has a few extra units in there. It has 1 extra Timely. And then the spice for this deck was the Alliance Dispatcher.
Yeah.
And the reason for that was the same thing as the Go Wide decks, is so that you have the ability to play the 2 units. If you wanted to turn 1, it gives you the ability to have, you could bring Poe out on 4 resources. So the same time, like you can kind of confuse your opponent a little bit with the fact that if they don't kill the dispatcher, you can then ECL out, or not ECL, you can bring out your Poe for 1 cheaper, and then your Poe's just sitting there on the board. It's like, are you going to kill Sabine or are you going to kill Poe? You got to pick. And it helps with a little bit of like changing the tempo of certain parts of the game around. For you, they also main deck 3 of the Peacekeepers for some heals to help a little bit in that. Their sideboard has 2 Aylas in it, and then it has 2 of the 501st in there as well, to help them be able to put more 1-drop units if they have to face a Bosk or I can't remember the Bosk or any of the Tarkin count decks. So to the same Sabine we've been seeing for the most part. So the last deck in the top 8 that we're going to cover is Iden Yellow. So JJ, what is this Iden Yellow, and why can it just not be Thrawn Yellow instead?
Yeah, definitely something interesting, very very interesting, something unexpected for sure. So we got this yellow Iden deck with 3 Inferno 4s, 3 Dr. Pershings, 3 Bazines, 3 Lieutenant Chilton, 2 Bosk, 1 Devastating Gunship, which is a nice addition to this deck, 1 Bounty Hunter Crew, 2 Cad Banes, 2 Supreme Leader Snokes, 2 Avengers, 1 copy of a Fine Edition, 1 Restock, 3 Power of the Dark Sides, 3 Merciless Contests, 3 copies of Takedown, 3 Felled Dragons, 2 Vigilances, 3 Super Laser Blasts, 3 Top Targets, 3 Enticing Rewards, and 3 Perilous Positions. And then in the sideboard here, we got 1 additional Fine Edition, Restock, 2 copies of Calculating Magna Guards, 1 additional Vigilance, 2 more Devastating Gunships, 2 additional Bounty Hunter Crews, and 1 additional Avenger in this list here. The spice on this deck is so good. I like it a lot. You got a lot of different options for Iden to use her ability there. And on top of that, you have a lot of great control. You have a lot of instances where you can use bounties to draw more into your deck or to heal your base as you need to, especially with top target. You have a lot of great options here to take down problematic units with Fel the Dragon and take down on here. And then you got a lot of great finishers between Avenger, Cad Bane, and Supreme Leader Snoke to completely neuter your opponent. Overall, this is a tough list to beat.
Yeah, and I think it's like I like the spice. I like this. I like this, and I want to put this on the table. Um, I do wonder if could Thrawn do it in the same manner, right? Like, could this be a Thrawn deck? Um, I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to break parts of it down. I think the big thing here you look at, right, is you have your, your common core set. Only one gunship is a little awkward just because that gunship allows you to do a lot of different things. This deck only has 2 vigilance. So this is not a mill deck. This is not like your Iden Blues that we had been seeing that says all I want to do is mill you. Um, and so I don't know. I kind of wonder, on some aspect, if this deck could if this deck, like, what is that fine edition really there for? That perilous position, or is it there to steal your opponent's card? I don't know. Um, like it. I do like this deck a lot, and this is definitely something that I will have to figure out how to navigate. I do think we might see this a little bit more. Um, I would be main decking 3 vigilances. I think though. I think that's what I would be doing. Um, But I don't
Yeah,
know. I like this deck though. I do like this, and I do think that this is something that looks like super fun to run. You know.
yeah, for sure. Definitely really interesting.
All right. Let's move on to a couple of interesting decks. So I have 2 of them. This one is a Cad Bane green. This is a Cad Bane ECL. We haven't seen Cad Bane ECL. Um, Makes sense though. Like, it is logical sense. There was actually 2 of them at this PQ. And I wanted to highlight this to give a shout out to Damien, one of my testing partners, as well as to kind of say, hey, look, if you haven't seen this deck, like, this deck can do work. Damien went 5-2 on the day. One of his losses was to Ryan from the top cut, so it kind of makes a little bit sense because they're like, we all test together. So um, losing to somebody that knows how you play um, is great. JJ, what is this Cad Bane deck?
Yeah, so we got a really good Cad Bane ECL deck here. We got 2 copies of Greedo. We got 3 Bazine Natals, 3 copies of Crafty Smuggler, 3 Cartel Spacers, 3 Boba Fett's, 2 Super Laser Techs. We got 2 copies of the Black Sun Starfighter, 3 Forloms, 3 Bosks, 3 copies of Zuckuss, 2 Syndicate Lackeys, 2 Xanadu Bloods, 3 copies of Cad Bane, 3 copies of Maul, and then we have 3 McClunkies, 2 No Good To Me Deads, 3, now there are 2 of them, 3 Resupplies, and 2 Hotshot DL44 Blasters. And then on the sideboard, we got 2 Sneak Attacks, 2 Waylays, 2 Palpatine Returns, 3 copies of Relentless, and 1 Devastator to round off the list there. Definitely really, really good. I like this deck a lot. You got a lot of great ambush units on here that you can use in addition to a third one or another one that you can add in with the ECL on there. A lot of great options on there. Maul, definitely a really, really strong choice to come in and just wipe out your opponent's units there, especially with that overwhelm. You got a lot of great options as well to sideboard in, just depending on what your opponent is bringing in. Having the Palpatine return would be a great, especially if you're able to do Maul twice back to back like that. It's really strong. So I like this a lot. There's a lot of great units on here. Definitely very aggressive for a yellow deck. But yeah, it's a really good list.
Yeah, and like the Xanadu Bloods actually do a lot more work than I think people think they do, and that's kind of
Yeah.
like the big thing with this deck is if it can get its Forlom and Zuckuss out together with now there are 3 of them or 2 of them, you're like, it immediately is saying, hey, you have 2 huge threats to deal with. And I say that because when your Zuckuss comes out, right? And that's why these are designed. That I believe that card is mainly designed for the two of them. But if you think about it, you get to add it. That thing can ambush at 7. It comes out on 5. It could kill a leader. It's crazy. And yes, I will say, Matt, like I was a little surprised that we don't have overwhelming barrages in there. But the main spice is to say, hey, that's what this now there are two of them for. And I've talked to Damien a little bit. He might actually come on the podcast to talk with us a little bit about this. And maybe like guest host on a podcast for us one time. But the big thing is the Xanadu blood being able to say, hey, here you go. I'm here. It's a 6/6, right? Like when it attacks, it's got 6 health. It does 6 damage to anything. Like it could take a fire spray off the board at the same turn the fire spray comes out. That's pretty big. It's CAD ship. It's designed to work with CAD. So when you got to think, when you can have Forlom and Zuckuss on the table on your 5 resource turn, and then your next resource turn is CAD and Xanadu blood, you're like, that's a lot of damage that you have to deal with. And it's similar-ish to what we were dealing with in the package of Boba Fett. This is obviously a transition from what we had with Boba Fett. So that is something that is kind of cool. One of the other things is funny. My nephew has had to play against him a couple of times, and like Damien will have the Bazina McClunkies or like a Greedo and a McClunky, and he'll play a Greedo down, he'll McClunky it back, kill his turn 1, do the same thing the next turn. It's just it's very silly.
Great.
Yeah. And I think like when we talk about this deck, like you could make this deck in a Tarkatown version too, by the way. Like the difference is you take your ramp package out, and the cards that you have in here is your ramp package and your maul, and then your sideboard. So you could take this and you can make this a CAD Tarkatown deck. Like this feels like a better CAD Tarkatown deck than some of the ones we've seen, because all you're doing is taking these and replacing them. And so you'd have to find something similar to the maul, something similar to the resupplies or the super laser techs, right? So you aren't able to ramp. But that's like, if this deck's goal is to stop you and then ramp over you and then be able to play Forlom and Zuckuss and Xanadu blood and just say, hey, what are you going to do? Come get me, bro. So that's what they should name this. That's what he should name this deck. Come get me, bro.
Come get me, bro. Yeah.
All right. The last deck that I want to cover for this PQ, and then we'll move on, is a Sabine Yellow deck. I do know Sabine Yellow has kind of been something that's always been in the background. A lot of people have wanted to try this, not wanted to try this. I do think this is a decent deck. I do think this can be very competitive in the meta. The question is, does this take the Quinlan Tarkatown spot? I don't know. We don't have a good yellow base in the same way we have the other ones, right? I mean, we do have the one that gives you -4, -0, right? Or -4, 0. That's the 25 health base. But other than that, we don't have the same deck or the same like base that we have with ECL and Tarkatown, right? They're not quite as popular. Get them. So this deck has 3 Churncoats, 3 Sabines, 3 Alliance X-Wings, 3 Green Squadron A-Rings, 3 Ketsus, 2 L37s, 3 Ahsokas, 3 Fleet Lieutenants, 3 Falcons, 3 Red 3s, 3 Wing Leaders, 2 Cassians, 2 Fang Fighters, 3 K2SOs, 2 Sabine Wren, the yellow version, 2 Ozatucks, 3 Plo Koons, 2 Heroics, 2 Spry Strikes, 2 Bamboozled, 2 Sneak Attacks, 2 Sparks, 3. That must be their sideboard. Did I miss their sideboard?
Yeah. The sideboard wasn't separated, but I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. I was gonna say, and then 3 Cause and 3 of the Hotshot Blaster. So again, this deck is very low to the ground. It wants to get in your face very aggressively. It does a little bit with some of the discard package, not in quite the same way that we see in the other ones. They are main decking Fang Fighters, it looks like, which makes sense. Like if you have to face other Sabines, So overall, this is a deck that is in the meta, and it is something that can be played. I wish I knew what their sideboard was specifically, but I'm guessing it's not all the events. But I don't.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I definitely like the addition of Ahsoka Tano in there as well as Sabine for that deck.
yeah, it's definitely something different, a little bit different than what we had seen, and it's exciting to see some different things that we had not seen before.
Yeah.
All right, shall we move on to the last segment for the evening, JJ?
Yeah.
Let me take your static picture off there. So shall we move on? We're going to do our Holocron archives. We're going to talk a little bit about week 1 PQ analysis. We're going to look at some of the percentage rates for the first PQ, and then we're going to take a look at kind of like for this, what I would call this season. We're going to kind of look at some of the top 8 leaders, different things like that. We're going to look at some statistics because you know what Tanner loves? He loves me some maths and some numbers. Welcome to our Holocron archives discussion on January 1 PQ. All right, welcome to our Holocron archives segment. This segment, we talk a little bit about different things that you can be doing in the competitive universe. Today, we're going to be covering some analysis of some of the different decks and seeing what we have here. And this is going to kind of lead into what I want to talk about next week. And I didn't have enough time this week because I worked a little bit last week, Friday, and then we didn't have any of the results until late Saturday night. And by that time, I was already pretty burnt out after playing Bosk for 7 rounds, as well as like 3 games every round. So I was a little bit burnt out between that and driving all the way back. But I will say we do have a new idea. And what I want to do is I want to look at some of the top decks and say, okay, what does this deck do well? What is, what can you play into? And like, is any of these decks like super great? So what we're going to cover tonight, just though. So I'm getting ahead of myself. What we're going to cover tonight is, should we tech our decks differently, right? Because now that we know a little bit of what's out there, a lot of people will net deck, and that's fair. I mean, we did that in X-Wing, right? Like, there's zero reason to invent your own deck if somebody had a really good deck. I mean, remember when I used to be able to fly 8 droids on the table? That was super fun. I had 3 bombers and 6 or what is it? 3 bombers and 5 vultures. I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was, right? Yeah. 5 vultures and 3 bombers. Drown those bombardment barns right out my butt. I love that. Around my front. But we should talk a little bit about these decks to say, should we be teching differently, right? The other thing I want to talk to is there a deck you want to swerve to, right? Like, is there something that we want to swerve to that is probably decent enough that, maybe you should be playing this instead? We'll also kind of cover, do we feel the meta is diverse enough? To me, it looks pretty diverse up there, but I will say, like, I was worried about playing a bunch of Jangos, and that didn't happen, but then a bunch of Sabines are winning now. That's a little concerning, but, they're not the top one. Han has been winning. So I want to talk a little bit about if the meta it feels diverse to us or not at all. And the last thing is like, what is the spice you're going to include? Is there something you want to include, JJ? And we don't answer now, but we're going to talk about if there's something you want to include. Because there was a person that ran an IG-88 deck. I don't know what place he got, but somebody ran IG-88 in the tournament this weekend. And I thought of you as soon as I saw that, and I was like, man, maybe JJ should swerve to that. So let's go over the numbers first. So the number, essentially, when I created this, we had 11 PQs that had been reported. There was 813 people in attendance. Overall, you had an average of 74 people per one. Ours that I had was 114. Some of the other ones are a little bit lower. So I feel that's a pretty good number. That's a pretty high turnout for these planetaries. And I think, like, that's what we want to see are we going to continue to see this type of attendance for the next couple of years, or even for the next 6 months, right? Like, if the attendance stays the same, then I think what that does is that says that we have a healthy game.
Yeah.
This is the winners of the PQs. This is not quite as interesting, in my opinion, as what is interesting of what makes top 8. But we had 2 Sabines win, 2 Han Yellows win, a Cad Red, or I guess I should say Cad Tarkentown, a Boss Green, a Kira Green, Quinlan Green, Quinlan Red, Cad Bane Blue, and an Iden Blue. So we did predict it, baby. We had one Iden Blue.
Yep.
Took something down. Sad that it wasn't a boss, but so now let's look at the top 8 leaders. So this is the percentage over all top 8s of how many leaders. And look, there is a surprise leader at the very, very bottom called Hondo Yellow. I don't know what that deck is. I am going to go find that deck at some point and say somebody needs to tell me how to play that. I need to see what that deck is. I did not go through that deck, just so you know. But as you can see, Sabine is at the top. So if you're looking to say, hey, what do I have to test against? What do I need to talk through? What do I need to know about? Sabine Green. There you go. Sabine ECL. Han 1 Yellow, Quinlan Tarkentown, Cad Tarkentown, and Bosk Blue, Django Tarkentown. Those are your top. Like, those are what you're seeing a lot of. Those are where I would expect the metas to be. Those are what is winning. You also have Han Greens, Kira's, Anakin Blues, Pelp Yellows. Those are also secondary. So, like, those are kind of, we talked a little bit before the break about what do you have to do to prep for a PQ. And the one thing is you don't go drink a bunch of whiskey and make a decision to switch your deck at midnight. But the other is these are some of the decks that we're seeing now that are actually coming out of the top. And I think it's very interesting. We knew we had a tech for, we know we have a tech for Sabine ECL. It's a thing. It's not going to go anywhere. This meta is definitely showing that the Sabines are still very good. They aren't winning everything, but they are still winning quite a bit. The notable thing is there's a Cassian yellow deck in there, a Django blue deck, which I thought was crazy, and then there's an Asajj red deck, right? I don't know. That's great. That's crazy. That's great. I love seeing it. I love seeing that.
Yeah.
The other notable thing is, as much as we talked about Django Red being this big menace, Django Red has one list so far this weekend that has made the top 8. That's it. So, I don't know. What are your initial thoughts?
Well, I mean, we've always known that Sabine is probably like the premier aggression deck, and we probably won't see her go away anytime soon, especially as she gets more and more new additions that she can add into her deck to make her a little more versatile. Han Yellow, also another long-standing leader that is just plain fun to play. He has so many different uses with different aspects on there, so we're going to see him a lot. I am excited to see Quinlan definitely make a big jump, a big splash coming out for this new pack up there. Definitely so many uses for him, especially with combined with Red on there. Can definitely play very similarly to a lot of good aggression decks, and you can really take advantage of it. And the best part about it is this light side, and just being able to have a lot of those light side cards that can go and combine with the aggression decks is really good on there. I am quite surprised though not seeing a big jump in Django Fat. I don't know if people just haven't played him enough, because I think that Django. The Django decks that we've seen here can do very, very well going down the line. And I would expect him to be at least within the top 5 on there.
It is. I made a mistake. I made a mistake. There's a Django Red and then a Django Tarkentown. They separated them.
Gotcha. Okay. But yeah, but it's still interesting to see that, at least just between Han and Sabine still being the top 2 just shows that, you can still have a lot of the original cards from the first set and still be competitive with a lot of the new cards. It speaks very well to the power curve of the game so far, for what FFGS has introduced into the game with all the new waves. It's very encouraging that they still maintain that balance in the game, and you're still able to play a lot of the older cards and still see brand new cards come in, brand new leaders and brand new upgrades come in, and still be very, very competitive for the game. It really speaks to the health of the game, and I like that a lot.
Yeah. Um. So now what we do is we could go down and look at just by leader. The most represented leader is Sabine, and I think that's obvious. Han is the next most represented leader, and then we have a Quinlan, and then Django, Cad, Bosk, Pelp, Kira, Iden, and Anakin. And it goes down from there. But if we look at it, like if you look at your top 8%, right? Like out of the 8%, you have Sabine taking almost 20%, and Han taking 15, and Quinlan taking almost 13, right? If you look at your base pairings, and this is not caring about ECL or Tarkentown, but essentially if you look at your base pairings, you have green black is 11, green hero though is 19 tops. 19 tops with green hero. That's crazy. That is the highest one in there. And then hero red is the second highest one in there, and then villain red is the third highest. So that kind of gives you a little bit of a like breakdown as you're building a deck. You can see these are where it's at for it. So I've added some lists. We're not going to go through every list. So I'm gonna tell JG that now before, because I can see him rolling his eyes and having a heart attack saying, Chris, we're going to be here until 4 in the morning. I have included these decks in here to talk a little bit about some of the mechanics and some of the pieces of the deck. And if we go back all the way back up, and when I asked my questions and I said, hey, should we be teching differently? Are there decks we should swerve to? Does the meta still feel diverse? I think we've answered that number one question. Does the meta still feel diverse? Yes. I think the meta still feels pretty diverse. I will say the stupid 25 health bases are throwing some of this off, and I think that's a conversation that has to be had in the future of, do we need these bases to be tweaked, or are they going to be pushed out with the new set? Like, there's a lot of things going into there. Those ECL and Tarkentown are huge bases that are taking over the meta. But I think that's the question. Do you feel the meta is diverse? So JJ, you can answer. You kind of already answered, but do you feel the meta is diverse?
Yeah, absolutely. The fact that we still see a very good balance of some of the cards that were first introduced in Wave 1, and the integration of cards that have come in subsequent Waves 2 and 3, just melded in and added on to become some of the top play cards now. Just speaks volumes for the design so far that they've had for the game. We're seeing a lot of creativity in these lists. Even decks that have been staples for like Sabine and for Han Solo, get new life breathed into them with a lot of the newer cards that come in. It make the meta evolve. We see new leaders come up to kind of challenge the position of the established leaders that are on there, and they're making their way up. We're seeing a lot more making up the top 8. We're seeing a lot more diversity in the same type of list, even with the leaders that have the same bases. You can see different builds that are made for them, and they work, and they do very, very well. So yeah, I think that the diversity is definitely in there. I think we're seeing a lot of different lists up there, and that's good for the game.
Yeah. All right. So now the question is are there decks that we should swerve to, right? So let's go through a little bit of these decks. So I threw the Han Yellow, and these are the winning ones, right? So Han Yellow is one of the top ones. Like, if you want to swerve to Sabine, so I'll just say it this way. You want to swerve to Sabine, there you go. Like, we don't have to have that conversation. I think, like, if you've listened to our show or any other damn podcast that's out there, like, they've talked so much about Sabine. Like, if aggro is your play style, Sabine is your bay. That's it. Like, that's what you want to play. Like, if you want to play hero aggro, that's where it's at. It does very, very well. But I think the big thing here is we look at this Han Yellow, right? This one is like what I would call, like, this is that toolboxy / like combo deck, right? Like, there's a lot of combos in here. This deck, I wouldn't swerve to this deck unless you feel very comfortable playing like something that has several thread lines that you can play for each turn, and that's a big one. Should you be bouncing? Should you be tapping? Should you just completely go face? When do you want to resource your extra card versus when you don't want to resource your extra card, right? Like if you have a crafty and an L337, who are you playing down? You need the shield. Do you not need the shield? That type of thing. Um, Han 1 yellow, I think, is one of the biggest up and coming decks. And when we talk about what we have to tech against, this is what I would say people will be running this deck more often. I feel this deck is going to become very, very big over the next month, personally. Um, and I don't know. I don't know how you feel about this deck. I have not. I tried to play this and I didn't have very many win rates with this, so I don't know if I'm
Yeah,
playing it wrong or what.
it is definitely a difficult deck to really get the hang of, right? Because everybody has their own natural bias for the style of a way that they want to play. Like some people prefer to play more control style, some people like to play more aggressively and stuff. It's really tough when you have a deck that can kind of do like a jack of all trades kind of, and you can adjust to your situation, but it's really hard to go against your own bias, right? When you're trying to play, a person who can really take advantage of this is a person who kind of trains themselves to really, see the different options that they can go to and adjust. And that's the real benefit of this list, is that if you're able to do that, then you're able to adjust. You basically have no counter, right? You have a really solid list that can adjust to all the different type of leaders and different styles of decks that come in, just by adjusting the way that you play the deck. And this has a lot of tools for that, but it's just really, really tough to acclimate yourself to it. So for that, the difficulty in learning this deck is very high, but it also has a high ceiling for how it could perform. So yeah.
Yeah. So this is a deck I would say I wouldn't swerve to unless you feel comfortable with it, but is definitely something I would be looking to tech against, right? Because this deck has hand hate, this deck has smuggle, this deck has I'm going to steal your resources. Um Crazy. And Zori in this deck is hands down the best addition that we've seen, in my opinion, to this deck is Zori Bliss. And that's because Zori is another smuggle card. So it allows you, when you do your Han stuff, like that's kind of like the big thing, right? When you do your Han stuff, you can put her down and you get her back. Like she comes back to
Yeah.
you. She's not gone forever, you know? So yeah, so that's kind of like that's Han 1 that is this deck. This we're going to cover this deck because I've not seen Cad Blue be a big thing, but this is kind of a contender to talk about. When we talk about Villain Blue a little bit, we used to have Boba, and then we had Bosk, and now is this somewhat of a contender because this can tap, this can eliminate, and this can control you. So JJ, why don't you read this deck off and tell us a little bit about this deck?
Yeah, so for this Cad Bane Blue deck here, we got one copy of Restock, 3 McClunkies, 2 Cartel Spacers, 3 Crafty Smugglers, 2 Pike Sentinels, 3 Bazine Metals. We got 3 Power of the Dark Sides, 2 Boba Fett's, 1 Relentless Pursuit, 2 Perilous Positions, 2 copies of the Elite P-38 Starfighters, 3 Vigilances, 1 copy of Takedown, 2 Lom Pikes, 2 Felder Dragons, 3 Forloms, and 3 Boss. We have 2 copies of Zuckuss, 2 copies of Bounty Hunter Crew, 3 Cad Banes, 1 Super Laser Blast, 2 Supreme Leader Snokes, and 2 Avengers. And then in the sideboard here, we have 2 Hotshot the L44 Blasters, 1 No Good to Me Dead, 1 additional Relentless Pursuits, 2 Waylays, 1 Change of Heart, 1 Rival's Fall, 1 additional Super Laser Blast, and 1 additional Supreme Leader Snoke in the sideboard there.
Yeah. I think I would run a 51 card deck and just put 2 of the Super Laser Blasts in.
Yeah, that would be my assessment too. Yeah.
So this is the deck we have not seen. So this is like when we talk about should we be swerving to this deck? Well, do you play hard control? Do you play like a soft control? This is mirroring, in my opinion, what Kira liked to do, except for it's with that yellow package. So you don't have the Sentinels like we did with Kira. We don't have the what are the name of that stupid Chilsons? You don't have Chilsons in because you have a lot of yellow card. This has a bounty hunter package. This is like more of what we would expect for soft control without it being green. There's no ramp cards, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about is this something that can be played as easily. I don't think it is. I don't think this is like a super easy deck to play. But this deck does have 3 different lines. You have your mill line, you have the hard control line, or you could play this as a mid-range deck because you have the ability to get out your units differently. I think a spice card for this deck would be, could you play there are 2 of them, right? Like, could you do that? Is that something that is like viable? I don't know. Um, but essentially that's what this deck does. It's one I would not swerve to unless you know what you're doing. And again, I always ask, like, can I just play Thrawn?
Yeah,
Can I play this with
exactly.
Thrawn? I don't know. Probably not. This is definitely a little bit different build than the Thrawn. So then you ask, should we be teching against this? Well, probably not. If you tech against villain blue, I think that's all you got to tech against. Like, you're probably not going to see a lot of this. I don't see this as being a super easy deck to navigate. Um, but I do think this is something that could pop up in the future. The next one, JJ, is a Asajj red deck. So this is not even Asajj Tarkentown. This is Asajj red. What is? Can you go through this deck too? I would love to go
Yeah.
through this deck as well.
So we got 3 Force Throws, 3 copies of Cartel Spacers, 3 Sneak Attacks, 3 Kylo Ren Silencers, 3 Bazina Towels, 3 Surprise Strikes, 3 Snowtrooper Lieutenants, 2 copies of Breaking In, 3 Fifth Brothers, 3 Seven Fleet Defenders, 3 Lurking TIE Phantoms, 3 Triple Dark Raids, 2 copies of the Black Sun Starfighter, 3 TIE Advance, 2 Zuckuses, 3 copies of Ruthless Raiders, 3 ATSTs, and 2 copies of Savage Press. And then on the sideboard, we have 2 Force Chokes, 2 No Good To Me Deads, 2 Disabling Fang Fighters, 2 Waylays, and 2 Cad Banes there. Definitely a really strong deck. I kind of feels off not seeing Forlom in addition to Zuckuss on here. But still, I mean, you got a lot of great units on here that can really, you got a pretty good balance between space and ground units. So you can kind of sort between the two, and having that force throw in there is really, really good. It's early on, especially if you can get out like your Fifth Brother out there, or later on Savage Oppress to back that up as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think Savage comes out on turn 3, right? And the probability she lives very long is very low, right? Like,
Yeah.
she's not living long.
Mhm.
I will say, like that's what this deck feels like. This has higher top end in it than I would have originally imagined, personally. But I do think that this deck has legs in the aspect of basically the Triple Dark Raid can pull a lot of your mid and high range units minus your Oppress and your Zuckuss. And that's why I think that's why Forlom's not in here, personally. But this deck is different. This deck is neat in the aspect of it's something we have not seen a lot of. I would probably have my Cad Banes over my Savages, but that's just me, I think. So we ask the same questions. Is this a deck that you're going to probably see? No. You probably are not going to see this deck. Is it a deck you could swerve to? I would actually make an argument that while this does not tap down like Django does, Django is better at the tapping and all of that fun stuff. This is a space deck that can compete with it, right? You just have to play around it. You are playing quite a bit of events. You're getting you play an event, you're getting a natural +1 boost for it. So sorry. Lions. You're getting a natural boost, and like you have a lot of pump. You have a natural pump, right? Plus you have the Snow Flute Lieutenant. You have Fifth Brother as a pump, right?
Yeah.
Like you have pump in this deck, and you have the Triple Dark Raid, and you have the TIE Advances, right? You're bringing the TIE Advances in. You're dumping the things in. You're dumping 2 experience tokens on something. Guess what? You can do that when Asajj is out, and guess who Asajj is now? Asajj is now a 6/6. She's not as easy to kill. She avoids takedown the next turn. She avoids a lot of things. So if you could build your ground presence up, or your space presence up, be able to do these things, you now have the ability to excuse me, you now have the ability to pump all of your stuff and become very aggressive early on, so that way they have to deal with your board or deal with Asajj. I don't think this is quite the level. I would not say this is quite the level of a Sabine deck, right? But I do think that this deck has legs, and I would, if you're looking for a villain aggro deck that has a unique twist on it, I would definitely say this is something you should try out. I would be tempted to swerve per se to this deck. I will also say though, I don't think this deck is something I would tech against though. But if you tech against Django Tarkentown space decks, this deck fits into that same category.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, let's move on to this Boss Green deck. This is kind of interesting. We haven't seen Boss Green do like super well, but we've seen it come up a little bit. JJ, why don't you tell us what this Boss Green deck is?
Yeah, so we got 3 copies of Salacious Crumb, 3 Bounty Hunter's Quarries, 2 Timely Interventions, 2 Dengars, 1 Force Choke, 3 copies of Price on Your Head, 1 Kylo Ren Silencer, 3 copies of Phase 3 Dark Troopers, 3 Super Laser Techs, 2 Punishing Ones, 3 Resupplies, 2 Open Fires, 1 Pillage, 3 Overwhelming Barrages, 3 Ruthless Raiders, 1 Pirate Battle Tank, 3 copies of Darth Vader, 3 copies of Maul, 3 Reinforcement Walkers, 2 Emperor Palpatines, 2 Crate Dragons, and 1 Devastator. And then on the sideboard, we got 2 copies of Admiral Yularen, 2 Scanning Officers, 3 copies of the Client, 1 copy of the Black Sun Enforcer, 1 Bravado, and 1 additional Devastator on the side there for you. Definitely a pretty good blend of aggression built in with ramp. You're trying to get your card or your resources up so you can bring out your Ruthless Raiders and Pirate Battle Tanks and just completely overrun your opponent at that point. You do have a good amount of lower cost cards for your Darth Vader when he comes into ambush, as well as Maul, who can go in there and just absolutely wreck your opponent there. And between your different bounties that you can use with Bosk, bringing in a Reinforcement Walker as well just helps keep your health up long enough to bring in those Vaders, bring in those Palps and stuff, and then just completely close out the game at that point. So it has a really good balance.
Yeah. And one of the things, the reason the Boss Blue deck does so well to some extent, right, is the healing, but it also has a pinging ability. Like I can't tell you how many times this weekend I would ping something and bring it into open fire range, right? You put a Kanan down. I don't have a takedown in hand, but I have an open fire and I have a top target. Let's say I could play top target, ping you, and open fire, and still heal or kill your unit. Like sometimes I play top target just to be able to ping and play open fire to kill something because that's what I had in hand. I will say when we talk about this deck, right? Like we say, is this a deck that you should swerve to? I actually feel that this deck is something you should swerve to, and I do think this is something that you should be looking out for teching wise. Now, I will say it hasn't really made a lot of impact, right? Boss Green has always kind of been in the background. You don't have the ECL base. It's probably there on purpose. I think there's a few tweaks I would do. Like I would probably have Relentless in there, at least in the sideboard. I would have the Relentless in there. You don't have any Space Sentinel, which is a little bit weird. To me, you have a few one-off things. I would probably shore some of that up. But at the same token, this is a bounty-ish deck, right? You have 6 bounties in there that you can play with the Dengar, and you have the ability to be able to do things. So while maybe this deck specifically is not the one I would be playing, I would say that this is something that, like, I think Red Green is very well positioned in this meta. I think it is something that we have not seen a lot. Red Green did compete with Sabines in the past meta because of the pinging ability of Vader. This is a leader that now comes out 2 turns earlier than Vader. You can ramp to him for the same turn that Sabine comes out. So the reason Kira was decent into Sabine was because I could ramp Kira into being able to flip and take out Sabine. Overwhelming Barrage. I will say, I feel this deck can do a very similar thing that Kira had, and this gives you the ability to play some of your stuff, be able to ping some of the different things, and then turn around and be able to bring Bosk out and just capitalize on it. I would probably run Death Marks in here, but that's just me.
Yeah.
I think Death Mark actually would be very beneficial. Like I said, there's some one-offs in here. I would probably also main deck the Black Sun Starfighter. I don't know. I would make a few different changes, but I do think that this is a deck you should watch out for, because I do think if people start playing this, this is something I feel that can compete with some of the Sabines of the world. And I think this can compete with the other boss of the world. And I do think that this, like, while this may have a harder time into like something like a Han Yellow, because he can strip your hand, um, outside of that, I think this deck can be very well positioned for the meta. So I actually think this is a deck I would probably not 100% tech for, but I would be teching to be able to dump off the bounties is what I would be doing. And then I would also be teching to be able to deal with his higher end units once they hit that time frame. Um, and this is definitely something I would play 100%. I think this is, if you like red villain, this is a deck I would highly consider getting into. Just this weird one-off stuff is too JJ for me.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. The next finalist that we have is a Django Blue. Like, Django's in all colors now, right? Django Blue. Who would have thought? And I'm going to let JJ read this one as well. This is 100% a JJ deck. Like, I don't even understand why Gods of Green Earth half of these cards are in here. They have a street gang recruiter in here. A street gang recruiter. So JJ, what is this deck?
So this Django Blue deck here, we got 2 copies of the Fine Edition, 1 restock, 2 top targets, 3 enticing rewards, 2 McClunkies, 2 entrenched. We got also 3 copies of Crafty Smuggler, 3 Dr. Pershings, 3 Bazine Natals, 1 Cloud Rider, 1 Mercenary Gunship. We got 3 copies of Power of the Dark Side, and we got 3 copies of the Client, 1 Tech, 3 copies of Perilous Position, 3 Elite P-38 Starfighters, 2 Vigilances, 2 Takedowns, 2 copies of Long Pike, 3 copies of Feldic Dragon, 2 Street Grang Recruiters, 2 copies of Vanquish, 2 Bounty Hunter Crews, 2 Jets Fire Sprays, or Fets Fire Spray rather, 2 copies of Cad Bane, 3 Super Laser Blast, and 2 Supreme Leader Snooks on there. Absolutely love the inclusion of the Street Gang Recruiter, mainly because you can use that to bring back some of your Underworld cards on there, namely like the Cloud Rider, right? You're going to send it in, ambush it, probably take out a card, then use Street Gang Recruiter, bring it back into your hand and do the same. You can also do the same with Bazine Natal if she gets taken out. Bring it back into the hand, force a discard from your opponent's hand. It could be a really critical card too for their turn coming up. Just offer a little bit of that control. There's quite a bit of different utility they can use with that card. So it's definitely a nice addition to this list.
Maybe. I don't know, JJ.
I like it.
I don't know.
It all depends on the Underworld card that you have, right? Because if you're specifically with Bazine, right? Because if you're playing Bazine early on, she gets knocked out, then you get to bring it back into your hand later on. Your opponent has less cards in their hand at that point, so you're able to really affect their next play for that next turn later on in the game, especially if they're hanging on to like a Felva Dragon that's going to take out one of your larger units or something like that, or if they're holding onto a record to ambush in later on and you take that out of their hand, that is a big play that you're taking out from them, and you're doing it at a much later turn, especially if you don't if you don't have a Bazine in your hand there already, or bring in a Cloud Rider, for instance, or even a Lum Pike as well. There's just a lot of different options. It really does depend though on which underground units you have currently available for you to bring back. So
yeah, I guess the chat saying McClunky could bring McClunky back. I mean, that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
I get that part. I do get. I don't know. This deck is wild to me. This is like, I don't know. I don't even know if I want to try this. Like, I don't even understand the shell of this. Like, why not just have Cad Bane in this deck instead of Django? Other than Django comes out a turn earlier, I don't know, because like, what are you pinging in here? You have one card. You have 3 cards that ping. That's it.
I do agree. I think this is better as a Cad Bane deck more than a Django.
So I don't know. Like somebody's gonna have to help me understand. Like there's no good to be deads in here, but yeah, in the sideboard they have Frozen and Carbonite instead of no good to be dead. Like I'm super confused. There's Ojabas in here. I don't know. Like the tech I get, like the one-off tech, 100% agree. Think that's fine. I don't disagree with that. I actually had thought about running one tech in Boss Blue as well, but this is different. And they don't even have the third vigilance in the sideboard. So like, is this deck trying to mill you? Is this deck just, I don't know what this deck is trying to do, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it feels more mid-range than anything.
So to answer the questions, would you swear to this deck? I would not. I would not.
Yeah.
Would I tech against this deck? No, I just tech against Yellow Villain. I don't think this is going to be an easy deck for people to just pick up and play either.
Yeah.
I think that CAD blue that we saw is a little bit more straightforward than this deck is, but I could be wrong. Another deck I thought was interesting that I actually like. This is a deck that I probably would put on the table as well. Though again, I always ask the question: if I'm playing this, why am I not just playing Sabine or Ahsoka? But this is a Cassian yellow, and they're even using a chopper base for it, right? So we even have a chopper base, kind of cool. Nice, I like it. So the question I have, JJ, is can you go over this deck for us? And is this something you would play?
Yeah, absolutely. So for Cassian here, we got 2 copies of Heroic Sacrifice, 3 Cartel Turncoats, 3 Daring Raids, 3 Wolfpack Escorts, 3 Green Squadron A-Wings, 3 Alliance X-Wings, 3 Armed to the Thieves, 3 copies of Surprise Strike, 3 Mercenary Gunships, 3 Anakin's Interceptors, 3 copies of Breaking In, 3 Red 3s, 3 copies of Millennium Falcon, 3 Outmaneuvers, 3 Wing Leaders, 1 copy of Chaos of War, 2 Waylays, and then 3 K2 SOs. This is a really interesting list. Definitely plays a lot more aggressive, right? And it wants to play out a lot of cheaper units out there just to take advantage of Cassian's ability. However, I don't think I would swerve to it, mainly because there is a lot of build-up that you have to do just to take advantage of Cassian's ability to be reliable. And there's so many ways to really take out these lower health units really easy. I think especially when you compare this to like a Sabine aggression deck, Sabine just feels a little more aggressive. This is more space heavy than we normally see for some of these aggression decks, so that can be a key factor in getting a lot more damage into your opponent's base, because they normally don't tech heavy against space. But it just feels like it's really not as efficient as some of the other aggression type lists or like decks can be. So do you have to tech against it? Yeah, probably. You probably want to keep a couple of Sentinel units just to prevent them from overrunning your space side really hard. But it just really lacks any defense or any type of Sentinel to prevent your opponent from coming in and killing you faster. So
yeah, I don't know if I would swerve to this or not. When we talk about that, I do think that this is actually a really good deck. Like it makes really good use of Cassian's ability, right? Because you can play your 2 cards, and then after you play your 2 cards, you could play your 2 cards, and then you could draw a card, right? So like you could play 2 churn coats and draw a card. Churn 1, you could play 1 churn coat and draw a card, right? And so like you don't have like hand hate is probably a thing, but not as much, right? For it. I don't know. I actually really like this deck. And I'm excited by the fact that somebody's playing Cassian. I just don't like think that this is I don't know if this is better than like a Sabine yellow, right? I don't think it is. I don't think it is. Would I swerve to this? I actually possibly would play this, yes, actually. Is it something I would tech against? Nah, you're just tech against hero yellow and call it a day. Like
yeah,
it's whatever.
agree.
Like Yeah, I don't know. Like it is playing. It is goal is to play as many units as it can, and then draw a card every turn. But I like it. It's definitely nice to see Cassian make the top. So. All right, the next one we have is a Tarkin Blue, putting a scanning officer in there in the top in there. I love that. I love me that scanning officer. It's also got regional governors in there.
Yeah.
JJ, read this is another JJ deck right here. Like this is like I get confused when I see some of these things. So but JJ,
Yeah.
what is this deck?
So this Tarkin blue deck, we got 2 Inferno 4s, 3 Regional Governors, 2 Entrenched, 1 Viper Probe Droid, 3 copies of Dr. Pershing, 2 Scanning Officers, 1 Delmico, 3 Power of the Dark Sides, 2 Making Openings, 2 copies of Death Troopers, 2 The Clients, 2 General Grievuses, which is a really interesting add-on to this, 3 copies of Lieutenant Chilton, 3 Vigilances, 2 Grand Moff Tarkins, 2 Fel the Dragons, 2 copies of Crosshair, 1 Gideon Hask, 3 Overwhelming Barrages, 3 Super Commandos, 1 Rivals Fall, 1 Palpatine Returns, 3 Darth Vaders, 2 Supreme Leader Snokes, 2 Avengers, and 1 Decimator to round off the main deck here. This probably could use a little more trimming. There are a couple of low-cost cards in here that I think that could be sacrificed to get some more mid-range cards in there, especially like having some Sentinel units like the Phase 3 battle droids, for instance, I think would be really great instead of having like a Viper Pro droid here or even Delmico. I know that it has a restore effect, but having Sentinel for this type of deck would be more beneficial, I would say, especially since you're relying heavily on Lieutenant Chilton to be that Sentinel force that could be taken out with Power of the Dark Side or Takedown, for instance. And I think you need that more in the Tarkin deck. Beyond that, I mean, it needs to be trimmed down and a little more simplified in order to get more use out of it, honestly. But overall, a pretty decent idea for Tarkin Blue deck.
Yeah. I like this deck. I would probably move the regional governors to the sideboard, though I do understand in Tarkin, you're able to increase it so it's a 2/5.
Yeah.
When you can make it a 3/6. I mean, you could do a lot of things with it. I would not put Phase 3 Dark Troopers in, JJ. You put the Calculating Magna Droids in. That's what you put in. Because it's a 3/4. It's a conditional Sentinel. It comes out as a Sentinel. If something else dies, it becomes a Sentinel again. That's what you put in there.
That's true.
Because if it works with Chilson better than putting the Phase 3 Dark Troopers in. Because if I have to put 3 of those in, I'm now having to cut out, unless I'm going to cut my scanning officers, which I wouldn't recommend. I'm now cutting blue cards, and I am already, this deck is at the limit of blue cards I would not want blue. So I agree with you. I think this deck could be shored up. I actually think this deck, if you want to play something that is control, but on the softer control side, this deck's for you. 100%. I think a few things need to change in it. I also probably would not tech against this at all. Personally, this is not a one I would tech against. I would say though that this is a deck that I would probably swerve to if I wanted to play this. I like Kira better. I think I just would rather play Kira than Tarkin. But in this meta, being able to spend a resource to give somebody an experience is pretty good. It is. I don't like the Tarkin unit, but I get why it's in there. It has enough removal. I think this could be extremely viable. Going into some of our current meta, I do agree. Maybe a little bit more Sentinel. And there's no space. I don't know what they're using to deal with space. Because there's nothing in Spit to deal with space. So,
yeah.
Like, I think that's the other consideration that needs to be looked at. Overall, I would not worry too much about this deck. The last deck we're not going to cover in detail. This is the deck that took down the PQ in Niles. You could check out earlier in the video, or if you're watching this as a standalone video, you could check this out in our other video. We already broke this deck down a little bit. this is the Quinlan ECL deck. I would 100% say this is a deck that if you like this style of play, I would swerve to it. And yes, I would be teching against this deck. Like, this deck is definitely something that you are going to see a lot more of. I think this deck is very good in what it does. I think people were sleeping on Quinlan green, and people were just focusing directly on the other one. And I don't know, maybe this is not the one from earlier. I don't remember. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, because it has a frontline shuttle in it. I didn't understand why. Again, I would probably be a little bit cautious because there's not a lot of space units in this deck, right? But this deck can be very, very aggressive. This deck is very good in my opinion. And this is definitely something that I would play. It is closer to my play style if I have to play a more aggro style deck. I really like this deck a lot and think this is something that could be viable in the future. All right.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts, JJ, as we wrap this segment up?
No, I mean, just there's still so many list archetypes to be explored. I think there's a lot of good different decks that we can do with a lot of the newer leaders that we've gotten from phase 3 that just need their time to be fully fleshed out and explored. And I think that they'll be making a splash eventually down the line. And with the new wave 4 coming out too, with the addition of pilots and stuff, that's going to be another shakeup for in the meta. We'll see a lot more concentration on vehicle units as well, making more of an appearance in the meta. So yeah, I mean, it's exciting to see what's going to come up.
Yep. And what I would say is, for me, I hope people do swerve to a few of these other decks that are not Sabine, in the effort of that we can reduce that Sabine number. Unless you want Sabine banned, I would like to see people stop playing Sabine. So I think that's kind of the thing is like when we talk about the top decks, the top metas, and all these other things, like the big thing here is understanding what you can do with some of these other decks, and I think they become viable. So what we'll try to do going forward for this segment is we'll try to actually take a couple of these decks and talk about pros and cons with them like we did before. See if there's something that, like, does this deck do well against this? Is this something that can beat Sabine? That type of thing. And we'll have some of that analysis in the future.
Mm-hmm.
With that being said, thank you for coming to our Holocron Archives discussion. It was a wonderful episode to come back to. Very sad Alex didn't feel very well tonight. He took the night off. And it's the winter. What do you expect? It's going around. But it was nice to come back and see everybody again. Hopefully you enjoy our podcast. If you do, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're liking us, you can like us there. You could join us on Discord. Talk with us. We don't have a very active Discord, but we'd like to make it active. I don't know. It's up to you guys. But if you have questions or things you want us to cover on the show, you're welcome to let us know, and we can add that to our next show or two.
And a quick shout out to anybody in the North Carolina area or the surrounding states. We will be having our planetary qualifier over at Atomic Empire in Durham, North Carolina on the 25th. So if you're looking to come out and play, definitely come out, sign up as soon as possible as you can. The space will fill up, but we're looking to have a great time then. Again, it's going to be at Atomic Empire in Durham on the 25th for the planetary qualifier there.
We also have one in Michigan, in Lansing on February 1st. So there you go. Like, we got a couple of those things coming up. If you want to come hang out, Alex will definitely be at that one, as long as he's not sick. And as long as I'm not sick, I'll be at that one. So it's gonna be super fun. If you want to come out and see any of us from planning phase, and we're working on a surprise for JJ. I'm not going to tell JJ what it is, but Alex and I have been talking about a surprise for JJ that we're hoping to be able to get. So with that being said, thank you all. Have a good night, and we'll see you on the flippity flop.
Have a good night, everybody.